All right, everybody, welcome back to the Bolts Pulse YouTube channel. I am so excited to bring you guys our second video. I wanted to wait a couple days for free agency to settle just a little bit and see what other signings we made, which we did. And I am pretty happy about, honestly, this front office. I can tell values those. I have it written right up here. I know it's backwards, but they really value these draft picks. Looking back to last year, we had four guys who really made an impact on this team, starting with Joe Alt, Ladd McConkey, especially the standout. And we also had Cam Hart, and then also another standout was Tarheeb Still playing that nickel. So I really trust this front office when it comes to making draft picks. I mean, look at the Rams. They've been making those picks throughout the past like 2 or 3 years, and it's really been helping develop their team very, very well. So you just got to trust the process a little bit. Don't rely on these big free agent signings, and who knows what other signings we still will make because there's still a lot of talent out there. And I know Ortiz does like to make those adjustments mid-season, trade for guys, and we need that cap space available. Who knows, we might just be having this cap space available for a good reason. I am not sure, but I really do trust this front office with what they're doing with this team, and especially Jim Harbaugh, man. How can you not trust the man when he really built that Michigan team from the ground up all those years and won a championship with them? So I just really trust this front office, and we're going to break down what they did this free agency. I've watched film on pretty much every free agent we brought in except Mike Williams because I already pretty much know how he plays, how he is, if we've watched him so many times. But I have watched film because I do want to be knowledgeable and know exactly how these players are, the good and the bad, and not just give you guys all the good and be like, oh yeah, this is a great player, blah, 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 blah. I got to be transparent. I got to be unbiased and make sure that we're giving you guys the raw details because I feel like a lot of people, especially Charger fans, are a little too optimistic, but we got to be real with ourselves. And again, I am optimistic about this front office, but we got to be realistic at the same time. So without further ado, let's dive right into it. All right, so starting with the guys who we signed, which I was pretty happy about. It wasn't anything terrible, but I can tell they didn't want to spend big, even though we had the second most cap space. I can see why they did it, but also I'm like, man, why can't we at least get one big name or one big free agent out there and then make those little signings, whether it was DK Metcalf or Milton Williams or whoever it was. I feel like we should have made at least one big splash. I mean, you can consider Najee Harris kind of that bigger splash, but I mean, his contract is really only 4.5 million with $5 million in incentives. I'm not sure if I got those numbers exactly right. It might be 5.5 million with 4 million in incentives, but it's like that's not much, and I like the incentives part. I like that we got him for that cheap, and then he has all those incentives, but at the same time, it's like, man, we could have really, really built this roster up if we spent just a little bit more money. I feel like they're a little stingy with spending their money. It is what it is, but let's break down the guys that we did sign. Starting with Najee Harris. I mean, I really, really liked this signing, and I was really advocating for this team to go and sign him because, I like J.K. Dobbins, don't get me wrong, but it's just I feel like he's just that guy you just can't rely on. You can't rely on him to get 20 plus touches a game and be there all 17 games for you and constantly be reliable. You kind of have to have him as a 1A running back to a 1B running back, which what we had with Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins, who Gus didn't play that well. That's why we released him. And J.K. played well, but just I feel like he wasn't consistent and he just has those injury problems, so we just did not bring him back. But Najee, man, let me tell you, I watched some film on him against some good teams, and he's a good player. That's why he's had 1,000 yards the past 4 seasons. That's very, very hard to accomplish. And I will say his offensive line didn't really help him out too much, especially his wide receivers. They didn't block too well. I don't know how Dan Moore got that bag, but he did not do well in the run game. He did not set that edge or blow guys out the way to create running lanes for Najee. And I feel like it was very obvious when the Steelers running the ball because they didn't have that threat. I mean, George Pickens is a great wide receiver, but it was kind of like the Chargers last year. We only had Ladd McConkey, so when we tried to run the ball, teams would know, and they wouldn't be scared of any of those other threats. But I feel like this year it's going to change just a little bit. But at the same time, Najee does have a lot more pros than cons. And we'll start with the pros. He can get carries. He's a bell cow back. He was top 10 in carries. And I think that this is what Harbaugh wants. He wants that guy who can get those carries and work that load. They want to run the ball. This team is a power run team. When Greg Roman was in San Francisco, he was averaging almost 140 yards per game with Frank Gore. Like, come on, they want to run the ball. Harbaugh at Michigan, they were known for running the ball. It's a Big Ten team. They want to run the ball. They want to control the clock, and I am all for it. I want this team to, run the ball. I want Najee to have like 100 yards a game. So that's something I really want because I'm a believer in the run game. Another thing with him is when I was watching film, he has great lateral agility. He can get from east to west really well, go side to side really well. And once he gets side to side, he has great acceleration. He doesn't have the best long speed, but if he has to, turn on the jets for that quick 1 second, that little 5-yard split, he can really, accelerate, which I really like. And that was really shown in his film when he saw a hole, man, or when he was, cutting back the cutback lane. He was able to hit that hole very well, and that's why he was top 10 in 10-plus yards run last year. 10-plus yard runs last year. So that's why I was very happy that we got this signing because, people say 3.9 yards per carry. But again, like I said, his offensive line and wide receivers did not do him much justice when it came to blocking. So he also does look for contact, which I really like. He lowers his shoulder. He likes that stiff arm. Kind of reminds me of almost LT with that stiff arm, man. He has a nasty stiff arm, but he can really, really hit you. He's a bigger body back. I feel like that's what Harbaugh wants and what Harbaugh likes in his offense, and it's just a Harbaugh guy, man. He loves that. He loves the hit. He loves the contact. So I'm a big fan of it as well. It was kind of fun watching his film, but also he had 0 fumbles, so that's something that you don't have to really worry about. He takes care of the ball. He can develop a better vision. I did tell, like I said, offensive line didn't do him much justice, but he would just run behind a guy and just kind of like put himself on his back and just like get tackled, and that's why I think he averaged those 3.9 yards per carry. I mean, it's still not bad. It's almost 4 yards a carry, but he did just get those, like he would take those easy 3 yards and just leave it at that. He wouldn't really try to bounce it outside or much. So I think he can develop that. He's only 27 years old. That's something that he can definitely work on, is that that vision, just being able to bounce it outside or be just a little bit more patient. There was runs where he was patient and like put his hand on the guard's back and really followed his block, and once he saw that hole, he would hit it. But overall, Najee Harris is a great running back, and I think he's going to do great on this team. And whether it's in the draft or we sign another running back, I think he's going to be a great complementary back to whoever is that RB2. And he's going to be a great running back when it comes to, those 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s, making a guy, miss or break a tackle or stiff arm. I think that's what we kind of lacked with J.K. Dobbins' size. Not to say he wasn't a good running back. J.K. Dobbins is more that agility, fast running back. But, Najee Harris packs a punch. So that's what I really like. And I think Greg Roman's going to really be happy with that. Another player that we did sign, Dante Jackson. I was honestly a little skeptical at first, but I actually really like this signing for our cornerback 1. I think he can hold up really well, and I think he will do really good in this Jesse Minter defense playing zone more specifically. I know they don't play man too much, but I think he plays really well in zone, and I feel like he's going to excel in that Jesse Minter defense. He's a ball hawk. He had 5 interceptions last year. He had a 66.9 passer rating when targeted. I think that's a great stat for a cornerback. When I was watching the film, it did hold up as well. He plays really well in the running game as well. He sets that edge. He's not scared to tackle. He gets his hands dirty, which I love from a cornerback because you don't really see that too much from corners nowadays. But he's not the biggest guy, but he's really fast. Like, he was keeping up with every wide receiver. And I was watching film on games where he was playing against better wide receivers, especially in the NFC North, playing against Jamar Chase. He held up pretty well. But one of the things that I guess that I've seen other people say, and what I saw, was he does give up those probably like one big play a game that can hurt you a bit, but most of the time, like, he's a pretty good player. And he can get a little lazy on the back end of plays. So let's say a quarterback is extending the play, he can get a little lazy, and that's what I noticed. Like, for example, I was watching that Cincinnati and Pittsburgh game when they're playing in Cincinnati later in the season. I like to watch games a little bit later in the season just to see how players have developed. And, first game, second game, they can get those jitters out. They're still getting accustomed to things. But I like to watch later in the season when, they've been through a lot of games and they're getting accustomed. But Dante Jackson was going up against Ja'Marr Chase more specifically. And, he covered him well. The first 3 seconds, that's why Joe Burrow had to exit the pocket and extend the play because he was covered. But, he's running like a little 10. They were in the red zone. They're running a little, Ja'Marr Chase was running a little 10-yard in. And Jackson had him covered. But then he kind of just got stuck and just was looking at Burrow. And then there goes Ja'Marr and keeps running. And Burrow just finds him across the field and wide open for a touchdown. So I feel like that's something that he needs to work on, is being a little less lazy and finishing till the whistle. Once you hear that whistle, then you can stop playing. But he just needs to be a little more consistent in that. I noticed that in a couple of plays, actually, especially the running game. Like, I feel like he should just put a little bit more effort in. And that's something that you might see from a veteran, is that little bit of laziness. But I think in this defense, especially, Derwin James as that leader, he can really amplify him to be that guy that is finishing through tackles and finishing till the end of the play, and Harbaugh's going to really emphasize that. So overall, I think he's a great player and a great signing. I'm going to be very comfortable having him at that cornerback number 1. He can play the left and right side and more that deep zone that we like to play. So overall, great signing by Ortiz, and that's why I think he was one of our first signings we had for sure. All right, so a interesting signing, Benjamin St-Juste. I think that's how you say his last name. But very interesting. I don't know how I feel about this one with the front office. I don't really know what they were thinking. He's not a very good player, but I can maybe see why they signed him. Maybe because he was one of the guys that they thought can come in and compete. But he reminds me a lot of maybe a guy I don't think you guys want to remember, but Michael Davis, especially with his size. He's a taller corner. He's 6'3", but he just doesn't. He has a great build, but he just got cooked, man. He got cooked last year. I was, reading a lot of Commanders fans were actually happy that he was gone, but who knows how he can revive his career with the Chargers. He's only 27 years old, and he is a former Michigan Wolverine. Maybe Harbaugh can really coach him up. He was recruited by Harbaugh originally and then transferred to Minnesota, but you just never know with these type of players. This could be a prove-it type contract, and he can compete with Cam Hart at that cornerback spot number 2. He was forced to play that cornerback number 1, and I did watch. I did watch the games against Mike Evans and Ja'Marr Chase. So there's a little, you gotta like, hey, these are some of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I just think he's more of a cornerback 2 than a 1. So I hope that he plays more in the flats than deeper, because he's not the fastest guy, but he's a bigger guy. So I feel like he'll play better in the running game, especially being that, bigger body. But at the same time, he wasn't a really good tackler compared to Dante Jackson. Like, he just would let guys run into him, like get into that tackling position and put his shoulder down, and then let guys hit him and bring him down like that, instead of, force to force and really laying a boom on the guy. And that's what I just wish I saw from him more, was in the running game, him, actually taking that angle and making a textbook tackle instead of just letting the guy run into you and getting trucked. I know he's 6'3", but man, use your size and your build to go ahead and, tackle the guy. So hopefully that's something that they polish up with his game, with this coaching staff. Again, I truly believe in this coaching staff. So if they can turn this guy around, I think they can turn anyone around. I know Christian Fulton was kind of a liability for us last year, but we'll see how it goes with Benjamin. He's not the fastest guy either, but he does play a lot better in zone, which I did notice. He didn't play very well in man, which they had him doing a lot last year. And that's kind of like that Dan Quinn system. Obviously had Trayvon Diggs, Deron Bland in Dallas, and they probably asked him to play man, and, he's not the fastest guy. He's a bigger guy. So I think he'll do a lot better, at least playing zone. So that's what gives me a little bit more optimism. I mean, there's one play where it was a Tampa 2 and he's playing the flats and the guy runs a little 5 yard out and he reads the play perfectly and he just drops the pick. Like he jumps the ball, he drops it. He had 0 interceptions, so he really needs to work on his hands as well as a corner. Overall, it's a whatever signing. It's a whatever signing. I can't say it's a good signing, but who knows what can happen? Who knows if he can revive his career, turn it around, and really become that cornerback 2 that we can rely on that boundary. Obviously, we got Tarheeb in the middle, but I think him and Cam Hart can really, battle it out in training camp and see who earns that second spot. And see, how he grows within the next 2 years. Again, he's only 27. I know it's not the youngest, but it's not the oldest either. So we'll see how he does, and I hope this coaching staff can really develop him and coach him up. All right, so a familiar name, Mike Williams. I am actually really glad we brought him back. I honestly really didn't think we were going to bring him back, but I was like, oh, well, he is a free agent. We could bring him back, but I'm glad that they made that choice because he's not expensive. He's $14 million cheaper than what he would have been if we kept him last season. So that helps us out a lot. Obviously, we know he has an injury history. He did tear his ACL in 2023, and he didn't really have that good of a tenure with the Jets. There was just a lot of drama. I don't think he was comfortable there. But he did play somewhat good in Pittsburgh. I think he was a reliable target with Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson is known for that deep ball. And there was a couple plays where he actually got that deep ball from Russ and was still that Mike Williams we know and love. So, I don't have to go too much into Mike. He's that 65-35 jump ball receiver. And I think with, especially bringing him back, he's going to be that reliable target for Herbert because he's so used to him. Man, I look back at that Raiders game, that 4th and 20, whatever, when we tied the game up, or all those game-winning, touchdowns, or those fade routes in the red zone. I feel like he's going to be a great, great red zone option for us and a guy that can play well along the side of Ladd McConkey. So I'm really glad we brought him back, and I feel like he's just a Charger, man. I think he needs to retire a Charger, just play out the rest of his career. I know it's a 1-year deal, but I really hope he does well this season and we keep him on a multi-year deal and just have him retire a Charger. So I'm really glad we brought him back. And, he did play, again, like I said, he played a lot better with Russ and Rodgers, but he still didn't play too much last season. And I think that's almost a good thing because, he is coming off that ACL tear. So I feel like now he's like, all right, I'm back in my home. I'm back with my guy Herbert. Let's make this thing happen. So overall, I think it's a great signing, and we've been needing wide receiver help. And I think it's like an upgrade over Joshua Palmer, man, So I'm really happy that he's back, and overall, a great signing. All right, so we did make 2 more moves today. There were actually interior defensive linemen, which I was a very big fan of because I think that was a very much of a position of need for this defense. I think it's very important to build through the trenches just like we saw Philly do. And you never know with these free agents, man. You never know, how it might go. I mean, look last season. Look at Poona Ford. We didn't even, everyone in Buffalo was saying that he sucked. He didn't get re-signed for a reason. And then we signed him, and all of a sudden he's this awesome defensive tackle and gets a bag with the Rams. And then Teair Tart, I'm really glad we kept too because, he was just kind of let off by Tennessee and then has a great, great season with us. So I really trust this defensive coaching staff and this front office when it comes to signing these underrated players and these kind of 1-year prove-it deals because, these prove-it deals can really, light a, under someone's butt and get them going to be able to prove themselves to get that next contract. Especially these guys who have shown flashes of great plays and being a great player. So we'll start with Deshaun Hand. He was with the Lions. He was a 4th-round draft pick, and then he was with Miami as well. But he is a little bit more on the older side. He is 29 years old. But, I mean, he has great size, 6'3", almost 300 pounds, and he's quick. When you're watching his film, he didn't have too much film, but when I was watching him, he is quick. And he was available and healthy, which, again, overall, besides Deshaun Hand, this is what this team is looking for. Guys who are available, guys who are healthy, and guys who are going to be there on Sunday and not injury-riddled. So he is that rotational player as well. This team has always had good rotational like a good rotational system when it comes to the defensive line. And I think, these are bigger dudes. They need rest. So having that rotation is really good. And, he can improve as a pass rusher. But again, I think he's going to be there more on those first and second downs when teams are looking to run the ball. And he's going to be that run stuffer. He has a great anchor. He has a great, he can hold really well and just hold this spot in that gap, A or B gap. He can play the nose. He can play the 3 technique as well. So, I think it's a great signing, man. Why not? It's like a why not deal. I think it was like 3.3 million for 1 year. Why not have him come in, prove himself, and he's going to fit really well with this defense. Coach him up and bring some energy to this defensive line. So, again, I think it's a great signing. I didn't even know who he was, honestly, but after watching some film, I did become a little bit of a fan of his game, and I'm really glad he's a Charger. So I think it's a great underrated signing by Joe Hortiz. Another signing we had today was Naquan Jones. Actually, a great signing, I believe. And I think it's going to go, no pun intended, hand in hand with Da'Shawn Hand. And I think that he's going to be a great rotational player when it comes to those more passing downs, when it's like a 2nd and 10 or a 2nd and long or third and 7, 3rd and 10, whatever that case may be, more where we know they're going to be passing the ball. I feel like he's going to get rotated in, and Hand's going to be that running stopper, that first down, that maybe 2nd and 5 kind of D tackle. So it's more of these situational players, but I think it's a great signing just based off his film. He's a great pass rusher. He's only 27 years old, 6'3", 313 pounds, great size, and he has a bag when it comes to his pass rushing moves. He had a great swim move. I could see that consistently. He had a great ripping move as well. He can work on, his run game a bit, but he is a great anchor. Like, if he has to stay in one spot and make sure that he holds his spot, he can be a great anchor. But he does move laterally really well as well, so he can move east to west and really, be good in the run game. But I did see some inconsistencies as well. I saw him more excel in the passing game. So I think that he can rush the passer really well and get in there and really win those one-on-ones. So I think it's a great signing. He has 63.2 PFF grade. He was an above average D tackle. So I think it's a very much so of an underrated signing, and it might be a guy that Arizona let go because he wasn't much of a scheme fit, but I still think it's a great signing. And again, someone that can prove themselves this season and earn that next contract. I think it's a great signing by Joe Hortiz and just building that depth at that defensive line position. So some guys, just to kind of give you guys a brief overview of guys who will be kept from version 1 of the Jim Harbaugh Chargers on this team. Just reading down the list I wrote here was Denzel Perryman, Troy Dye, Bradley Bozeman, Teair Tart, Jalen Reagor, Khalil Mack, J.K. Scott, and just a couple hours before I made this video, Taylor Heinicke, which I'm very glad that we brought him back. It was someone I was actually looking for us to re-sign. It was either going to be, I believe, him or Jameis Winston, but still a great signing because he can come in, he knows the offense, and it's someone that we can rely on to be a backup quarterback. Not a starting quarterback, but if something happens to Herbert's ankle, God forbid, someone that can come in and replace him. But I was really happy that we kept this linebacker group together. I think in my first video I said, man, we got to keep this group together. Re-sign Perryman, re-sign Troy Dye. I think those are 2 great re-signings, and I'm really glad they stayed here in Los Angeles. And then another guy that I was really glad we signed at least. I know we were all big advocates to keep Poona Ford, but he was, I think, a little too expensive for what this team wanted to pay him. So I think Teair Tart was that cheaper option, and I think he's still going to be a great player for this team. Also got Jalen Reagor back. I know he's not the craziest, most big-name player, but it is still an awesome, option at that backup wide receiver position. He did have some flashes this year. So, I'm excited to see him back and maybe be that gadget player that we can use in the offense on, a wide receiver screen, or maybe we throw him in there when a guy gets injured. So I'm really glad that we actually did re-sign him. He's not anything crazy, but he's a good backup wide receiver. Obviously, I don't really need to say much about Khalil Mack. We all know what he can do, one of the best edge rushers and run defenders in the league. So I'm really glad we brought him back. I was hoping maybe like a multi-year deal, but I feel like we might draft an edge rusher and have him develop behind Khalil. We kept some guys together. It wasn't too crazy, but there was some guys that we did let go that I wasn't happy about. Obviously, I wasn't happy about Puna Ford walking. I wish we actually did re-sign him, but I'm glad we re-signed Molden too. I know that was a little bit earlier in free agency. He played really well, great pickup. So, I trust this front office. I'm glad we let Fulton and Samuel Jr. walk because, they just weren't consistent, man. They just weren't consistent. Fulton had his games and didn't have his games, and then Asante was always injured. So, Asante has his moments, but also has his bad moments. And then, there's some other guys that we did let walk too, but the most surprising one to me was, Bradley Bozeman. I'm still a little skeptical, and I was even so skeptical, I went back and watched some film on him, and I feel like we discredit him just a little tiny bit because he played somewhat well, and you can blame some of the, problems on just the overall offense. And I think that goes down to the wide receivers because, these guys aren't getting open. They're not getting open in time. I'm looking at Bozeman blocking, and they're doubling McConkey. Palmer's not getting open. Johnston's not getting open. Disley's not getting open. What else is Herbert supposed to do? So it's like, it's not just one thing or one player. Not to say he was a good player, but he wasn't the worst in the world. So who knows? Maybe he can develop. I know they want that veteran presence still on the offensive line, but it's iffy with them. Maybe, they sat down with them and was like, hey, we want to re-sign you, but you got to work on these things because we noticed it in film. So, I hope that he can improve those things, but we will see. He knows this offense very well. He's very, he's more that vet. He's a little bit more knowledgeable, but I think we all seen it last season. So I hope they can, I have a lot of hope. So we'll see. But that was overall our signings this offseason. Who knows what can still happen? Who knows who we can still re-sign or sign? But talking about sign, let's get into guys who I think we can still sign that are free agents. All right, so some free agents I think that we could re-sign. I know this team likes to get those under-the-radar guys who still kind of have stuff to prove and rotational guys, but these are some guys that I think can be quality starters for us if we do sign them. Starting with my personal favorite, someone that I'm really advocating for this team to sign is Mekhi Becton, because whether he takes over that right or left guard spot, which is probably going to be that right guard where Trey Pipkins is at, bring some competition in for Trey Pipkins. I think he needs to improve his game just a little bit. He's kind of he just looks really stiff, man. He just looks really stiff and lanky. And it's just, I'm not a big fan of Trey Pipkins, especially at guard. I feel like he's more of a tackle. So if anything, slide him over to backup tackle. He can back up either Alt or Rashawn Slater. And even with Jameer Salyer, I think he can be a backup tackle as well. So why not bring in some more guard depth? Have Mekhi right there, have Zion Johnson. I know Zion didn't play too well, but Mekhi Becton would be an awesome signing. I feel like Najee Harris would thank the front office for signing him because he would love to run behind him. And I think Mekhi Becton would really love to play for this team because it's a power running team. We saw what he did in Philly. Bro, he led Saquon in those lanes and helped open up all those lanes in that great offensive line. So Philly transformed him and really shown that, hey, this guy can play guard. He's a lot more of a guard. And this team loves to have pulling guards. So if you have Mekhi Becton pulling man, I think that's a great, thing for this running offense. So I would love for him to sign with us. And we have money, man. Just sign the man. Just sign the man. If you give him $9-10 million a year, just sign him, Ortiz. You have money to spend. Just sign him for 1 or 2 years. Give it a chance. I'm begging, please. We need help on this offensive line, and even in pass protection, he's not too bad. So let's just go out and get him, please. I can so see him being a Charger. So I really hope we get him. But a backup option if we don't get Mekhi is Brandon Streff. I think he's that veteran presence. He's always been pretty good. He played really well in Washington. He was always one of those, known good guards. But he played okay in Jacksonville. But he is older. He's 34 years old. But I still think it'd be a great upgrade over Trey Pipkins and someone that we can really utilize on that offensive line. Someone else that I think we could sign on more of a prove-it deal is Tevin Jenkins. I know he isn't known to be the best blocker, but bring him in maybe on a smaller contract and have him compete with Zion Johnson or Tevin Jenkins Trey Pipkins at that guard spot and see how he does. He had his flashes and he didn't play too well. Caleb Williams was one of the most sacked, or was the most sacked quarterback last year. Sorry about that. So I think we just need to bring in at least one more guy in free agency just to have some competition on this offensive line and say, hey, someone can take your job, the Zion Johnson and Trey Pipkins. And I think that's going to really help make their game even better. Some other guys that I do have down here, I only have one wide receiver that I think we could sign. I think Cooper Kupp is going to be a little more expensive, as well as Stephon Diggs. So I'm not the biggest fan of signing them. Obviously, they're great wide receivers, but I just don't think that we're gonna sign them. I just really don't think so. I think if we're gonna sign anybody, it's gonna be Keenan Allen. I think we're gonna reunite him and Mike Williams. We'll bring him in on a similar deal around maybe like $8 million a year. Have him retire a Charger, please. So I would love to have him back. He'd be a great safety blanket for Herbert. And now you got Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Ladd McConkey. I think that's a lot more better of a wide receiver core than, Joshua Palmer, Ladd McConkey, and Quentin Johnston. You can have Quentin Johnston be that backup. But I think Keenan would be a great option for this team. Another guy that on the defensive side that I think we can bring in is Dante Fowler Jr. He wasn't the craziest player. He wasn't the best player, but I think he'd be a great rotational piece on the defense for more passing downs when, we're running that, when it's more of a long second down or a longer third down. We can have Tui start at that edge spot on those, first and second downs, and then have Dante rotate in, just kind of like how we had with Khalil Mack and Bud Dupree. So if we can bring him in on like maybe a 1 year, $5 million deal, I think that'd be a great thing for this defense. And then another guy that I think we should sign is Kyle Juszczyk, because he was with Greg Roman in Baltimore. He's accustomed to this offense. He knows what it is. And we run a lot of, formations with fullbacks. That I formation, we're in that power O. And I feel like Juszczyk still has, I know he's a little bit older, but he has that IQ. He knows what he's doing. I know we had Scott Matlock at that fullback position last year, but why not just keep Matlock on the defensive side, let him play D tackle, which he is okay at, but just let him play defense. Don't have him flip-flopping. I know he wasn't the worst fullback, but it's hard when you're having a brand new guy transitioning from defense to offense and having to learn that whole new role, compared when you can bring in a seasoned vet that knows this offense, that's not going to be crazy expensive, and we have money to spend, and just bring him in, and you can have, hypothetically, Mekhi Becton, getting to the second level, Kyle Juszczyk leading the way, and Najee Harris right behind him. Man, come on, bro. That's a power running offense. So that's kind of like my ideal, offense. And, imagine, Mekhi Becton and Joe Alt on that right side. Are you kidding me? Those are big dudes. And we can just have that power O running offense that this team wants to have, that running identity. So I just think we just need to build a little bit more on the blocking side, running in the trenches. We already have a great, run blocking tight end in Will Dissly. So who knows? Who knows what can happen with this front office? I mean, these were two guys that I never even heard of, in Naquan Jones and Deshaun Hand, that we signed today. So who knows who they will sign. But overall, I think it's been a great offseason. I know Chargers fans might say otherwise, but I'm pretty happy with it so far. And again, they value draft picks. They want to build this team through the draft. I think we can get another 4 quality starters in this draft. There's a lot of depth in this draft. There might be a lot of top-end talent, which I'm glad, because we don't have like a top 10 pick. But there's a lot of talent in the late second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And we got a lot of comp picks this year too. So let's see what this team does in the draft. Let's see who they draft, what happens. Like, look at last year. We were like, oh, Tarheeb Still, Cam Hart, who are these guys? I've never even heard these guys, and they come in and ball out. So you just never know with this front office and what they will do, but I have full faith in them. And I'll make another video on the draft specifically on guys who I think we should target more in the first round, and then get into the later rounds, because that's a lot of film study I got to do. I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about to give you guys good information and not just saying, oh yeah, I saw this guy say he was good, so he's good. No, I want to see it myself and have it pass the eye test myself. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, whether you were eating, working out, played the video and just listened while driving, whatever it may be. I appreciate the support on the first video so far. Make sure to subscribe for more content. Please, leave some constructive criticism in the comments. I'm always trying to get better as a commentator, as a YouTuber. I'm barely learning, so I'm always open to that type of stuff. I love doing this as well, so make sure to subscribe for more videos, more Charger content. It's going to help push our videos to more Chargers fans. And like the video as well. It's going to help a lot. Comment your thoughts on our offseason so far. So, yeah, I appreciate the support. Keep following us on Instagram and supporting us through that. You guys have been doing great on that. We're going to have more content on there as well. So I really appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys in the next video.